everyone. So we're going to pick up right where we left off. So at this point you should already have all of your organisms labeled in this food web. You've looked at the questions and you've answered them as best as you can, and hopefully you answered them correctly. So I'm going to go ahead and get my pen ready. Now you might, if you don't have the actual page, be sure that you have written your answers somewhere, because I'm not going to pull up the questions. I'm just going to say the questions and kind of draw on this as we go. So the first question was, name an organism that functions both as a primary consumer and a secondary consumer. So really we're looking for any organisms that have a 1 and a 2 by them. In this case, there's only one of those organisms, that's the snail, so I'm just going to put a circle around him and mark him as a number 1. So he's the only organism that answers question number 1, a primary and a secondary. Question 2 says, name one organism that functions both as a secondary consumer and a tertiary consumer. That one, we only had one, that'd be this crayfish. I'm just going to put a 2 next to him for question number 2. Now, it doesn't ask, but I could also ask, name any organisms that function as a tertiary and quaternary consumer. In this case, we actually have 2 examples. We have our great blue heron and we have our osprey. But that wasn't one of the questions, but it could have been. Question 3. If a largemouth bass, so this guy over here, if he were to die of natural causes, so nothing ate him, he just got old or he was diseased and he died, draw an arrow indicating the direction of energy transfer and label the arrow with the letter E. So you have to recall, when something dies, who eats that? It wasn't the osprey that killed him, he died of natural causes. It's decomposers that are going to eat organisms that are already dead. So I'm going to draw an arrow from this largemouth bass to these decomposers. In this case it says decomposer, bacteria, and scavengers. Now typically you will not see decomposers drawn on a food web or a food chain. It only is because in this exercise they knew they were going to ask questions about it. And then I'm going to put an E. Just like our energy as humans come from salads and hamburgers and birds and whatever we're eating, same with these decomposers. Their energy is coming from what they're eating. Sure, it's already dead, but that's still energy. Alright, the next question, question number 4, says draw arrows showing the direction of nutrient cycling and label the arrows with the letter N. Remember before when we had those decomposers, they were eating, but they're also pooping. One of the major roles of decomposers is recycling nutrients. So we know those nutrients come from the decomposers and they actually go right back into the soil. Now, once they're in the soil, who picks them up? It's our producers. So we're going to have a couple arrows. We're going to have nutrients going to the submerged aquatic vegetation. We're going to have some nutrients going to those cyanobacteria, and then some nutrients going to these diatoms. So really great role of decomposers. All right, question number 5. How many different types of producers do we have in our food web? We indicated this earlier when we were labeling. We have 3. We have diatoms, cyanobacteria, and submerged aquatic vegetation. Question number 6. If all the great blue herons, this guy up here, were removed from the ecosystem, which population would increase the most? So it's going to be one of the populations that the great blue heron eats. It's either going to be this bluegill sunfish, this trout, and this crayfish. So you have 3 choices. Of those, the answer is crayfish. Look at what is eating crayfish. The only organism eating crayfish is the great blue heron. So if you have no great blue herons, crayfish are now at the top of their food chain. Nothing eats them. So if nothing's eating them, their population is going to grow and grow. However, and this actually ties in to question number 7. However, the reason it's not trout and it's not this sunfish is because, sure, we get rid of great blue herons, but trout are also eaten by largemouth bass and osprey. This sunfish is also eaten by largemouth bass. So you get rid of one predator, but you still have other predators. So the crayfish population will be what increases the most. The second part of question number 6 said this would, in turn, cause a decrease in which population? So crayfish are exploding. They don't have any predators anymore. Their population's increasing. However, they eat snails, and they're the snail's only predator. So if you have more and more crayfish, that means they need more and more food, which means the snail population, that's the one that's going to decrease the most. Question 7, I actually just addressed this. It just said, why don't these trout and these sunfish increase? Because they have other predators to feed on them. So that's the end of this exercise and also the end of this lecture. Don't forget you do have a review quiz that will be posted momentarily if it isn't already. That review quiz is going to cover everything that was on these video lectures for this past week. You have until Sunday evening to do them, so just be sure, just know that it's there, and do it whenever you want to. With that, I will see you guys on Friday in lab.